What is up, fight fans? It is one high and the mile high, so you know what that means. It is time for the MMA plug presented to you by Mile High Sports. We are coming to you live from the number 38 presented by Volo. Got my man Danny Bailey behind the boards holding it down as always for me. Guys, we've got a lot to talk about this weekend, from the local side of events through the UFC, plenty of things to sink our teeth into all throughout the program. But first and foremost, want to give a shout out to the crew here at the Mile High Sports Network. Make sure that you give them a like, share, and subscribe wherever possible. They are giving you all the latest and greatest up-to-date coverage for the core foreign sports. Of course, naturally, CU. Best wishes to Coach Prime out there. Heard that he's been away with some illnesses going on. Hopefully he's back in the mix here soon. NFL offseason talks, mini camps, OTAs, all of the sort. In the NHL, you have the Panthers up 2-1 in the Stanley Cup Finals. The NBA Finals is tied 1-1 right now in the finals between the Pacers and the Thunder. But with the Nuggets being one of the premier franchises right now in the association, there is lots of offseason talk about some potential moves there. Our guys are giving you some of the best coverage on that. And then we have the red-headed stepchild, the Rockies. The Rockies are 12-54. Whenever you hear in baseball the term below the Mendoza line, that typically refers to an individual's terrible batting average below 200. Well, the Rockies' win percentage is below the Mendoza line, sitting at a ripe 182. I saw some posts online over the weekend from some people that showed that there was a pretty large crowd, all things considered, which only furthers the notion that Coors Field is simply the biggest outdoor bar in Colorado that just so happens to have pro baseball squash matches going in the background sometimes. Make sure to check out the Mile High Sports Magazine, online channels, the podcast, so on and so forth. Again, smash that like, share, and subscribe wherever possible. Move it along to the Colorado Rundown. We have a show this weekend for Colorado Combat Club. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the program. It's happening at the Stampede. That is at 2430 South Havana Street. Check us out this weekend. Like we said, we're going to have some MMA, a couple of pro bouts, as well as some Muay Thai in the mix. Come and check us out this weekend. Lots of local talent being showcased there on that card. We have Guerrilla Fighting Championship going down in Pueblo next weekend at the Pueblo Convention Center. There is 5280 Muay Thai Fight Series happening at the Stampede on June 27th. The very next night, you have Battle MMA Championships at the Colorado Springs City Hub, getting after it. That is going to be, like I say, that is June 28th. And then following that, week of a break for things on the local side of things, with it being the 4th of July or that holiday weekend. Then we're going to have CJJC returning with Grapple Games on the 11th, as well as Sparta having a show coming back that weekend. Real quick, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about our card with Colorado Combat Club. We have some big matchups, some high-stakes action that is on the schedule. You have a pro Muay Thai bout between Alex Gutierrez taking on Jake Gallagher. That's going to be a matchup that, you're really going to see a couple of guys who want to go out there, and they talked about in our countdown package that there's some personal reasons for themselves to prove some things to themselves to go out there with the effort that they're trying to put out. It's something that I think that you will be able to see, hopefully an inspired performance from Jake Gallagher, who is looking to go out there and put on a performance in memoriam of his mother. And then on the flip side, you have Alex Gutierrez, who is a guy who is going out there looking to just impress himself in the process. He said he's been putting in a ton of work in the gym and has really wanting to go out there and show his support system, but also show to himself that he can get it done still under the lights. So looking forward to that matchup on the pro Muay Thai side. We have a matchup between a couple of highly touted. I mean, again, to me, this is the if you don't know, now you know type of matchup from the card. A couple of young rising prospects who already have a great deal of experience, but also have a tremendous future. That's a matchup between Owen Schultz and Austin Haverkamp. I think that these two young men are going to go out there and leave it all in the cage. This is going to be something that is going to be worth the price of admission alone for that fight. Make sure that you check those two out. You have a friend of the program and Connor Leonard making his return in the mix. Unfortunately, we did lose our originally scheduled main event from the card. We lost the matchup between Kelvin Martinez and Alex Rego last night. Unfortunately, best wishes to Rego. He sustained an injury and will be unable to compete this weekend. Hopefully, it's a quick turnaround and he'll be back in the cage before too long. Another matchup on the card that is going to have a title on the line. You have Javon Dale, who has had multiple highlight reel finishes on his resume. He also had a victorious decision in his last fight for us for Combat Club. He's going to be taking on a guy who is hungry for another title to be added to his resume. I think it's multiple titles already this year, if I'm not mistaken, for Isaiah Wright. Isaiah Wright is a black belt who leads a lot of students on the grappling mats over there at Onyx, and now has also been forging waters and has competed for us multiple times in both MMA, then now also with this Muay Thai side of things for a title fight. He's leading from the front of the pack for all of his students. I commend that, and I look to see a banger of a matchup between these two guys. I mean, like I say, they're both seasoned, they're both experienced. They both throw with bad intentions and have finishes on their resumes apiece. I'm really excited for that fight right there. You have a couple of ladies getting after it in the Lyons and Wagner matchup. That's going to be one where, I think that it's that classic styles clash of you have someone who is the more seasoned grappler versus a more seasoned striker who, once they go in there and mix it all up, is going to be able to employ their game plan a best for the other. And then another matchup that I want to give a little bit of a kudos or a highlight and show some love to. We have a kid who's making his debut. This is the Grigio and Slayton matchup. Lorenzo Grigio, he's fought for us on the 5280 side in Muay Thai. He also has some experience on the submission grappling side, has competed in our CJJC cage. This is a young man who has a tremendous upside and a lot of bright things in his future. Based off of who he trains with, he's a regular training partner for UFC fixtures such as Yusuf the Moroccan Devil Zalal, Chris El Guapo Gutierrez, Isaac Dolgarian, Jonathan Martinez. A lot of these guys who are some of the who's who at Factory X in the UFC of those weight classes. He has just ample experience with them now, and it is his time to go out there and make his debut. He's going to have a large support system rallying behind him. And again, this is a kid who I do have an attachment to because I've spent a lot of time training with him on the mats myself, way back to when he was just out here, just exploring the game, just joining the open classes, rolling together as white belts years ago, to now seeing his progression and where he's at. It's just one of those things that it's been a long time coming, and I'm excited to see what this matchup holds for him. And on the flip side, he's going to have to go out there and face somebody who is also intending to do harm to him. So I'm excited to see what that matchup does right there under the bright lights. Moving along from that, though, we are going to transition into this, we're going to talk real quick. Last weekend's UFC 316 that happened at the Prudential Center out there in Newark. This essentially, in a way, I mean, obviously he's a Georgian fighter, but in many ways it was kind of a homecoming or a home game, if you will, for Merab Dvalishvili. Merab spent a considerable amount of his formative years here in the States and in the US out there in the UFC even until just recently where he's been mostly in Las Vegas. A large portion of that time was out there in New York. It was with the Longo Serra crew out there. It was with Aljamain Sterling, who, I mean, you gotta love Aljo. In the post-fight press conference, he said Aljamain Sterling hates sparring, but he was willing to do so to prepare Merab for this fight. Aljo doesn't have a fight plan, but he is getting married in the next few weeks. Well, he's given half of his $50K bonus that he earned to Aljo right off the top just for being a good friend and a training partner. Gotta love somebody like Merab in that instance. The finish coming by a north-south choke, which you don't see a north-south choke happen all too often, and especially in the smaller weight classes. But I think that this really kind of cemented Merab's status amongst some of the hierarchy at 135 pounds. In this sense, the knock on Merab through time had been, well, yeah, he's just a decisionator, that he may not be the most exciting style of fighter. Well, as we talked about last week, the path to the title was so ridiculously hard for Merab that he has been forged by the fire time and time again. And now he's a father to his own style. He's very unorthodox, but he has arguably the best cardio in UFC history. And he's just growing in confidence. He's growing his skill set, and his confidence is growing by the matchup. I cannot wait to see the fight against Corey Sandhagen next. Again, it's a little bit of a homer side. I think that the matchup favors Corey just because he has a more rounded skill set. I think he's the better striker, but again, styles make fights, and that's why they go out there and you put two of the best in the world in the cage and you see who comes out on top. But that's a fight that I cannot wait to see. I have to express that one more time. We're going to talk a little bit more about the O'Malley end of things. And just to round that off, Merab is a guy who I don't know that he ever has an off switch. Even when Merab is out and having fun, Merab is like what some people say, like, what is it, like type 2 fun? Something along like people who their fun or their thrill and their enjoyment rides off of borderline, adrenaline junkie type of status, the element of risk. So it's like the people who enjoy like rock climbing and water rafting and downhill trail biking and that sort. Rob kind of does a lot of that in his own way. Like we've seen it in his videos, and he comes, guys, I make stupid mistake where he just runs through the mountains and he's jumping on trees or jumping from boulder to boulder. Like there is nothing that Merab does that lacks excitement, I guess, in his everyday life. Even just the antics that he comes across, like Merab kind of really blew up as far as his online presence and personality a few years ago when he was like the world star guy for the UFC. When he first moved out to Vegas, and he was probably at maybe a little bit more of a dodgy area or a seedy apartment complex, but there was a lot of fights all the time. So he was pulling up and he was just posting that, hey, like there's this fight out here happening at at the park or out here on the grass. A couple of those things. Merab is entertaining as a person, and now he's becoming entertaining as a fighter. That's a dangerous combination in the mix. I do have to give kudos to the Sugar Show because he was gracious in defeat. He owned up to it. He didn't make any sort of excuses right there on the mic. When he addressed the crowd, he said, thank you for coming out. I got to give credit to him in that sense. I know that he's made a statement online since that he still believes that he can beat Merab. And some people are saying, oh, yeah, you're delusional, this, that, and the other. Well, yeah, I mean, that probably is a little bit of delusion. But at the same time, to get to the level of being a champion, you have to have a certain level of delusional confidence. You have to have a certain level of delusional belief in yourself to be able to surmount the odds that are stacked against you to get to that stage. So I can't fault Sugar for having that mindset or thinking in that sort of sense. In the co-main event, Kayla Harrison, right now, I think that she is the shot in the arm that the women's division needs. She is a personality. She is very good at what she does. Though she does have holes in her game, I will offer that. But her physical attributes often allow her to be able to overcome where some of the deficiencies are. In this matchup against Julianna Peña, I'll use the phrase because Kayla spoke to it herself this last week. I mean, she looked like the lady Brock Lesnar in. She looked like somebody who was in a completely different weight class or a completely different physical type than what Julianna was. There were some opportunities that Kayla offered while trying to seek the takedown that Julianna just wasn't able to exploit. Some of these moments could simply come down to horsepower. Some of them can come down to, well, I don't know that Julianna has enough sting in her punches to really make Kayla have to respect them while she's on her way in. Whereas the super fight that's been set up with Amanda Nunes, I don't know that Kayla will be able to walk through some of those strikes. I don't know that Kayla will be able to just find the back or find the body lock and get the action down to the canvas in such an easy fashion. We saw from the face-off, at least in height, Kayla's not giving up size. Or Kayla is not at a size advantage, I should say. Amanda will be able to match that from a height perspective. And then from a frame, obviously Kayla is going to be more muscled up. But we also have to remember that Amanda was the 145 champion as well. So she's capable of fighting at a higher weight and can hold that sort of mass and still perform. Beat one of the other greatest women of all time, Cyborg, in the process at that weight. If Amanda is in any sort of similar form from where she left when we last saw her in her final title defense against Irene Aldana a couple of years ago, if she's anywhere near that form, I think that we see the Lioness reclaim the throne. That all being said, that's multiple years away, which could be a pro and a con. It could have been just time for her body to heal up and to, just really get back to a healthy state. But on the flip side, could be some timing, could be some, well, now that you're running your own academy and you left ATT because of Kayla, is there some sort of mental gymnastics that you're having to deal with? It brings up a lot of noteworthy variables for this matchup, one way or the other. Again, when was the last time that we really had a fight in the women's division where everybody was like, yes, this is the fight. This is something that I am looking forward to. Book this. It doesn't necessarily have to be a co-main, or it doesn't need to be a main event, but it could be a co-main, have some strong support around it. But one way or the other, this is a fight that I want to see. I don't know when the last time is, and some of you out there listening can chime in and can send this into me. And if we get a response from you before the show, I've got 2 tickets to this weekend's Colorado Combat Club show for you. But when was the last time that there was this hyped up of a women's fight, that you were looking forward to as far as a title fight? I would argue to say that the last one had to have probably been Amanda versus Cyborg. Now we have Amanda versus Kayla as another potential super fight. Hey, I'm interested in hearing your feedback on that side. But let's talk again about where some of this puts, being that these were both 135 title fights. I think that this does, like I mentioned, I think that this does put Merab in a discussion amongst the hierarchy of the greats at bantamweight at 135 pounds. But the question is, and the question that I have for you all out there is, where? Just where does this place him amongst that list? And I'll offer a few names of examples that I would put up there or would hold in consideration. One of them, I mean, he's as controversial as it gets, but you can't deny the skill set that this particular fighter has. So first one on the list, and to me, he still holds the top as the GOAT, and it's because of the reign that he had from the WC era into the merger or the acquisition from the UFC. All the time that he had to spend away with injuries to then come back after such layoffs and perform at a high level time and time again to reclaim his title. That's Dominick Cruz. If we're talking about title defenses, on paper, we can't not mention Aljamain Sterling. I personally don't put Aljo as I wouldn't put Aljo above Cruz, but there are some people out there who, especially during Aljo's reign, that were talking about his defense streak and his body of work. He's a very quality champion who had multiple defenses. However, I will say that I don't think that I put him at the top, but someone that's in consideration. The controversial one in the mix is TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw might skill for skill be at the top of the list, given that he does have tremendous MMA wrestling. His striking and his combinations, the tenacity, the pace, which, you could argue some of all of those things were pharmaceutically enhanced or products of pharmaceutical enhancement in terms of the volume, the pace, the performances like the Bahal fight where the volume increased through time, the Cody first fight where he was able to recover within there's so many things that you can attribute to or maybe point figures at with TJ's career. But the fact of the matter is he was tremendously gifted as a fighter as far as his skill set goes. And this one, he might not be on the all-timer list, but in terms of a one single fight or that one form of them, that God tier title fight performance, I don't know that we have seen anybody at 135 pounds eclipse the performance that Cody Garbrandt, who we're going to talk more about in a little bit because he's fighting this weekend, but I don't know that Cody Nolov Garbrandt has a usurper as far as the single best performance in a UFC bantamweight title fight. That fight against Dominick Cruz is one that is ranked amongst top title performances in history of all weight classes, consistently one of the tops on all of those lists. If you are a newer fan or if you have never seen that fight, you're welcome. I encourage you to go check that out because that is a spectacular performance to go check out. Some of the other main card highlights, you had Joe Pyfer defeating Kelvin Gastelum. Joe Pyfer gassed himself out. He shot his wad in the first round. He had Kelvin all but finished. A couple of drops, from punches, the head kick that went shin to chin, and Kelvin just ate it. But Kelvin's got that hard-ass Mexican head, and he was not going to go away. And in the end, he started to rally. The thing is with a vet like Kelvin, if you let him hang around for long enough and you don't do enough to put him out or put him away, he'll find his way back in a fight. And though he didn't win, I think that he showed that he still has something there, though I don't believe it is anywhere near the top of the division. I think that it is going to be continued in this gatekeeper role. But again, though, for Kelvin, how much longer does he want to push it forward? He's still in his early 30s, but he was in the UFC at such a young age. At the time was the youngest ever Ultimate Fighter champion when he got in way back in the Jones versus Sonnen season. How much longer does he want to stretch it? How dedicated is he to it? It's a great question. I think that Kelvin, who fought for the interim title against Israel Adesanya, is long gone. But again, I think he's 33, still has some fight in him, but at what level? You had Mario Batista hit Patchy Mix with the fraud check, as the kids say. I do have it on, some decent authority that Patchy might have had an injury coming into this fight, which that could explain his performance overall. That would be the only thing to me that halfway justifies what we saw, because what was in there was a punching bag. He did not move his head off the center line. He got boxed up. And for somebody who is known to be one of the most elite submission specialists in all of mixed martial arts, especially in the bantamweight division, a guy who had came into that contest at north of 20-1 with multiple submission victories, a decorated grappler, to only have one failed takedown attempt in the entire fight. The math wasn't mathing, and he didn't look like himself. Fight was on short notice, so I don't know what the state of Patchy was when he took that fight. I don't know if it was a situation of, yeah, man, like I'm hurt, I'm banged up, but this is my chance to get signed to the UFC. This is my chance to get my foot in the door after waiting on the outside looking in for so long. I'm going to take it, get through this fight, and then after that, we're going to figure it out. Patchy hasn't said anything about an injury. I don't think that he will, or I don't anticipate that he does. But I wouldn't be surprised. Like I say, I've heard from some people around the Extreme Couture side that there may have been some, he may have been injured coming into that fight. I would imagine that he gets a win, and then after the win, he'll talk about this debut experience. But time will tell. We'll see how that plays out. Kevin Holland beats Vicente Luque. He just submits him by a Darce choke in the second round, Darce Brabo, whichever way you want to look at it. Vicente Luque is another one of those guys who I think that there's still some fight in the tank, but at this stage of the game, he's going to be continually put in these matchups against either very tough in game veterans or against rising prospects that they're trying to build a name off of him. After him having the brain bleed injury a couple of years back and him making his return, he's won some fights in the process and he's had some good performances, but he is not the silent assassin of old. He is not the Vicente Luque who was on that impressive finish streak from a few years back that shot forward to the top of the division alongside his peer Dorino Gilbert Burns. That guy is once again gone. This is one of those situations where, just as mentioned with Kelvin, how much longer does Vicente want to kick the can down the road? That'll be the big question going forward for him. On the flip side, Kevin Holland calls out Colby Covington. I would love to see that fight. Kevin Holland said that he wants to have the most washed up, easy fights in that way. Hey, great way to promote yourself. And I don't blame him for having that perspective or taking that thought process. I think that when we're looking at Kevin Holland, if he is dedicated, and we mentioned this on the program before on multiple occasions, if he's inspired and he's actually in the gym, he's actually putting in work, that's a guy that you have to respect. You have to put some respect on his name and put some respect on what he brings to the octagon. But on the flip side, if Kevin is in some of his cowboy type of moments where he's in his don't give a you-know-what type of mindsets, then you see performances that are reflective of that. Going forward, if he stays dedicated at 170, he's an interesting wrinkle to throw in the mix. He has a knockout victory over a guy who could be on the outside looking in of a title shot with a big victory this weekend in Joaquin Buckley. That did happen in 185, but still there's the history amongst those two. Something to keep your eye on going forward. Joshua Van picks up a big TKO against Bruno Silva in the flyweight clash. This is something that set up a tremendous opportunity immediately for Joshua Van. Joshua Van is now turning around and will fight International Fight Week against Brandon Royval. Manel Kopp just pulled out. Manel Kopp, interestingly, bit of a loudmouth himself, was talking a lot about Brandon after Brandon had to pull up from their fight. Well, sometimes karma comes quick for you, buddy, because he fractured his foot. The video surfaced online. He fractured his foot in a training session. He is now out from that fight. Joshua Van will be filling his place. That is a fight, International Fight Week, that has fireworks written all over it. One of the fastest rising flyweights against the number one guy in the world. Take my money. You had Azamat Mirzakhanov, who sent Brezson Hibiero to the shadow realm with some ground and pound. You know, Mirzakhanov is a guy who, when you take a look at him, you don't think much because he's kind of got a dad bod. He's not hulking for the division, but that dude knows how to fight, man. He's got a win over our buddy in the show and Dustin Jacoby. You know, he did have a little bit of a PED vacation at one point, or some tainted stuff in his mix. But again, this is a dude who he's faster than he looks. You know, again, he's smaller for the division, but where he lacks in size and maybe some of that strength, he has precision, he has speed, and that leads to some snap that has him, you know, in a very promised position leading forward in the division. The only issue is nobody knows who he is. Half the people don't even know how to say his name. So hopefully he continues to market himself and try to grow his profile that way. You had a very controversial decision, and you all can chime in and let me know what you thought for the Waldo Cortez Acosta decision over Sergey Spivak. Most people believe that Spivak won the fight, especially you know, that he had a clear 2-1. Close fight. I probably would have given it to Spivak in that situation. Let me know what you guys think. Andreas Gustafsson, man, he came in and that was a mauling against Chaos Williams. This was the debut for Andreas Gustafsson, who a guy who might potentially have some PR issues for the UFC going forward. You know, I don't know too much about his background. I do know what some of his covered tattoos are. So, you know, we'll see how that all goes forward. You know, maybe it's a reformed person. Maybe it's for the marketing that he got it covered up, or not wanting to have Iron Eagles directly on him. I don't know. But that guy can fight. That was a tremendous debut that he had. He was the very first UFC fighter to now make the walk with the patch that will then go in for the trading card deal that they have going on right now. It's a new memorabilia initiative that's just kicked off for the UFC. We spoke about it a couple of weeks back. He is the first guy who is going to be featured for that. You have Wang Kong, who took a catchweight fight over Ariana De Silva, former Ariane Lipski, Queen of Violence. She missed weight by like 7 pounds. So, hey, all due credit to Wang Kong for continuing to take the fight and being game for it. I understand that there were some health complications and issues for Lipski, but also at the same time, like, that's pretty egregious. Like, that's gotta be snuffed and figured out as far as missing by that much. And, you know, again, I know that they said there was potentially some sort of benign issue and health, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a doctor. All I know is that she showed up 7 pounds over. Last matchup to talk about here, you had Markel Medeiros picking up a unanimous decision victory on the prelims. You know, this was a fight where I thought that Markel had a potential to finish it on a couple of occasions, but didn't close the door. Hey, is what it is. Winning is hard in the UFC. He was pretty smooth in the process, and that is now 3-0, and he's onward and upward. That is a kid with a bright future in the lightweight division. Congratulations to you, Q. You also had the president making an appearance along cage side. Kayla Harrison wrapped the belt around his waist. You had another issue with the walkout with the guardrails. They almost collapsed down on Merab and his team as they were walking out. The thing is that's not really anything on the UFC or on the event staff, or on the UFC staff, I should say. Maybe some of the event staff to keep people from crowding those guardrails so much that they collapse. Fortunately, this time it was on one of the lower levels and people weren't falling from up high. But yeah, you know, it's just one of those things that happens every now and then, and hopefully they can figure out a way from people getting hurt in those crowd situations going forward. Rob is also 3 takedowns away from 100. Fun fact. In terms of reputation, there was a lot that Suga tried to make throughout this camp, that he had removed the degeneracy from his life, no more of the vices. You know, he had gotten rid of smoking, masturbation, all sorts of things in the process, because he thought that that was going to bring him to victory in the cage. And friend of the program, Zach Poga, even tweeted this, and he said that he didn't think that the media was making enough of Sean removing the degeneracy from his life. Honestly, I mean, I commend Sean for it. If he feels like that's making him a better person in life, I'm not going to fault him. But I think no matter how many times he beat his meat or didn't, he wasn't going to beat Merab. There's just no chance that that was going to happen. Stylistically, he didn't have the tools to be able to do so. Moving forward, talking about this weekend's UFC Atlanta card. This is headlined by a couple of welterweights. You have former champion Kamaru Usman, who does a lot of his training out here in Denver under Trevor Whitman, taking on Numansa Joaquin Buckley. This is going down at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. You can check out the prelims starting at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Multiple Denver fighters on this card as well. Also, fun fact, 3 Codys on the card. I don't know that we've ever had a card with 3 Codys in the past. So just a couple of little tidbits there for you. In this main event matchup, you have former welterweight champion Kamaru Usman, who he's currently on a 3-fight skid. He's taken on Joaquin Buckley. This is the return to action for the first time that we've seen him in a couple of years, since he fought against Khamzat Chimaev on short notice over on Fight Island for at 185 pounds. This is a fight where I think that we really kind of will see what is left in the tank for Kamaru. Obviously, one of the longtime great champions, not the greatest at 170. That title goes to GSP, but right next in line as far as all-time great champions at 170 in terms of his title defenses and whatnot. You have a young, hungry Joaquin Buckley who has gotten better and better with every performance. I mean, on the personal side, I absolutely want Usman to win this fight. I can't stand Buckley. I have been in many of rooms and environments all across the country with Buckley. So it's not just one incident that I can speak to. I've been around Buckley many a times. I've met him on multiple occasions or interacted from the media and whatnot perspective. It's just one of those guys who is the gnat at the barbecue. If you ever watch the old Bad Boys movie, he's just the gnat at the barbecue who just is bugging you the entire time. That is just annoying. I sat at a UFC event and him and, all apologies to my friend Charles Johnson, Energy, who he was there with, sitting next to Charles Johnson, but they were right behind me. And from the first fights of the prelims through the main event, Joaquin Buckley did not stop talking the entire time, and he has no inside voice. So just from a purely personal standpoint, he annoys me. I want Kamaru Usman to win this fight. In the co-main event, you have Rose Namajunas taking on Miranda Maverick, both ladies who have a tremendous amount of time training out here in the Denver area. You have the former strawweight queen in Rose Namajunas, who is looking to bounce back after dropping one to Erin Blanchfield a few months back. Miranda Maverick is a rising contender, and, I think that she has a well-rounded skill set. I am interested to see how the bright lights in a co-main event slot against somebody who has the prestige that Rose Namajunas does, just by the experience factor. And, she has settled more in, and yet was the last matchup unsuccessful? Sure. But that was also against Erin Blanchfield, who was on the outside looking into a title shot. I think that Rose has an edge in this matchup, but I do think that this will be a highly competitive fight between these two ladies here. Some of the other fights featured here on the main card. It's another one two guys who I know and love them both. Michael Chiesa taking on Court McGee. Michael Chiesa, he's always a joy to deal with whenever I've been around and covering the LFA. He's a great personality, but on the flip side, the Crusher Court McGee have been in the gym with him before, have been, just through the years, exchanged messages back and forth online. Both guys, former winners of The Ultimate Fighter, a tremendous amount of octagon experience. Both guys who only have a few fights left in the tank, but I expect to see two vets who are highly skilled grapplers go out there and have a fun fight. Just again, two vets who are long in the teeth, ready to put on a fun show. You have Mansour Abdul Malik taking on our friend of the show in Cody Brundage, the undefeated Russian prospect. He's going to be taking on Cody Brundage. This is a styles clash. You have Abdul Malik. Why I had the Russian part right, but you have Abdul Malik who is taking on Cody Brundage, who the Cody that we saw in his last fight against Julian Marquez, especially those first 3.5 minutes, that Cody can hang with anybody in the tops of the division. I'm not going to go and crown or put a championship label on anybody, but if Cody can build off of that performance in those first 3.5 minutes there before things turn into a firefight, and he did end up getting that knockout victory still in the first round against Julian Marquez. But if Cody can stay within himself, stick to his game plan, stick to his attributes and his route to victory, I think that this is going to be a very promising endeavor for him down there in Atlanta. Cody's originally from South Carolina, so this is a bit of a homecoming for him, being able to fight back down in the South. Going to have a lot of his original support system be in close proximity to go and check him out there this weekend. You have another fight that's going down in the middleweight division between the Golden Boy, Edmen Shahbazyan, taking on Andre Petroski. At one point, Edmen Shahbazyan was one of the fastest rising stars in the 185-pound division. He's had some wins. He's had some losses. He's had a couple of bad losses that were ran together in the process. And on the flip side, you have Andre Petroski, who, he's had a couple of losses, but very, fair to say that Andre's had a pretty consistent time in the UFC. What he brings is no surprise. Andre is going to have a very wrestling-heavy grapple approach. This is a matchup where, one guy could have a slingshot effect where it could set the other one back considerably. Based off of what we've seen in more of the recent performances, I do have to believe that this matchup favors Andre. I expect Andre to crowd him right away. Andre is not going to give Edmen a chance to be able to try to get into a rhythm or to get his striking in the mix. If Andre can get hands on him, whether that be up against the fence and starting off with the body lock, or at worst, takes him all the way to the ground, and then guaranteed if he gets him to any sort of front headlock position, it's a wrap. If Andre gets Edmen's neck in any sort of sense, he will strangle him in this fight. I don't know what the odds are on that. I don't really follow that side. Shop your best value that you can. But if I'm going to give you a hammer of the week, I'm going to say that Andre Petroski wins by submission in this fight. You also have a former LFA standout and star in Jamie Lynn Horth taking on Teresa Bleda. It's going to be a fun matchup between a young, promising Czech striker and a submission artist. Styles clash in the mix there. Some prelim highlights. You have Cody Durden taking on Jose Ochoa. Flyweight matchup between a couple of guys who are, you have Cody Durden, who I think he's a turd as a person, but he has a high pace as a grappler. He's not really a good striker at all. But you have Ochoa trying to really explode onto the scene with his debut. Flyweight is wide open right now. There is a lot of star power or share of the division to be had. And if he goes out there and has an impressive victory over somebody who has the veteran experience, who has fought guys at the top of the division like Cody Durden, I think that we could see a little bit of a fast track push behind one Jose Ochoa. You have a light heavyweight matchup between Umar Saad taking on Alonzo Menefield. Hey, this could be a sleeper fight of the night. You have two guys who want to go out there and punch each other's lights out. When you have big boys who throw big bombs, every now and then somebody's going to connect. You have the undefeated Sai taking on the athleticism of Menefield. Same time, you might see some guys get tired, and it might not be the most electric of matchups past 5 minutes, but you might see 5 minutes of fury. You have one of my old roommates, Nicolas Mota, taking on Loic Rajabarov. This is a matchup of styles clash once again. You have a Tajiki wrestler who's going to be taking on a Brazilian Muay Thai specialist. Mota's trying to put together some wins. You know, he's still early within his UFC run. He's trying to avoid having a backwards record through these first few fights on this contract. His opponent lost in his debut is going to be hungry to get his hand raised. If this stays on the feet, or if this allows for some striking exchanges, switch kick from Mota as well as his hooks. I mean, the big hooker is the big hooker for a reason. That is a big bomb in his hands, and if he can uncork it and let it land, I can say to it whether, I mean, sparring tales are sparring tales. I've seen him separate many people from consciousness with it. If he's able to unload his game plan, I see that being a potential finish victory for Mota. If it goes 15 minutes, I would venture to say that it's going to go the other direction. A couple of other matchups to touch on real quick. Trevor Peek spent some time out here training in Colorado, so I want to hit on him. But this is going to be a tough fight. There is no easy way to say this for Trevor Peek. He is facing an uphill battle against arguably one of the most under the radar prospects at 155 pounds, a guy who had a fight of the year performance last year at Inside Sphere against Daniel Huber. That's Estevan Ribovic. Ribovic is a sniper with his finishing game. Peek, he's a little bit more wild, but he's going to go for broke. He is that dude who you could go right now, pick whatever, go to the ball canning line right now here in Denver, Colorado, and pick some muscled up dude off of the line who just loves to fight. That's Trevor Peek. Go to your whatever shift work, factory job, wherever out there across the country, that blue collar dude who is just a rough and tough sumbitch who loves to get down. That's Trevor Peek. Not a whole lot of technique, but man, when that dude gets there and in the mix, he could take some shots and he can trade them in the process. Sometimes he doesn't even throw punches. He throws clubs. But when those find their mark, man, do they produce some devastating results. Stylistically, I think that it's going to be a fun fight. You have a technician against a dog who is able to make the fight go their direction. You have a bantamweight showdown between Javid Basharat taking on Damon Blackshear. Damon Blackshear has been extremely active. I think that his activity rate is flying under the radar a little bit in the process. You have Javid Basharat coming into the contest at 14-0-1. This is going to be a slick test because Blackshear is a really good grappler, and Basharat on the flip side, with the win, he could very well find himself in the rankings. What do you guys think as far as this goes? Just want to talk real quick about one subject before we go into 3 rounds to close it out. Guys, I think that it may be time for us to acknowledge that Kayla Harrison might be the natty goat. Yes, she's been compared to Lady Brock Lesnar on many of occasions. Yes, we've poked fun at it before. Yes, it's been something that has been the talk of social media circles and forum threads for as long as she's been in MMA, for as long as she's joined the sport. I mean, all last week, the comparisons of the memes of John Cena in a wig, all of those have happened for quite some time. But when we look at the actual facts of the situation, and again, say whatever for Drug Free Sport International and that she trains at American Top Team, the person who oversees that is out of American Top Team, blah, blah, blah. But Kayla started getting drug tested when she was like 12 years old in the USADA pool and for judo purposes, for international competition and for traveling all over. She then went through more than a decade of Olympic protocol for drug testing. Furthered by all of this time now in MMA where she's gone through the protocols that are in place, say whatever of them, if you will, but she has been tested some of the most out of anybody out there on the roster. In her entire life of being drug tested, she's never had a failure. She's never had a false positive. She's never had an issue with a tainted supplement. And overall, in terms of, when you look at people who are natty versus not. I mean, yeah, is she an absolute genetic freak? If she's natural, 100%. But one thing that you cannot say is that she's had massive transformations throughout time. She hasn't had these Vitor Belfort type of body manipulations where at some points they look like a deflated football to going back to being fully super juiced up. You know, she hasn't had those sort of moments. She's always looked very jacked and hugely muscular. When she won in judo, you know, she was in the 170-pound range. All of that with the data being said, I mean, yeah, we could always say that there could be some good stuff that she's on that is able to beat the tests, but for that many years of tests that she doesn't have anything that's ever came back with even a false positive or a tainted supplement, as we might have to face the reality and give her the flowers that she could very well be the natty goat. Moving along from that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to close out the show by going 3 rounds. My man, Danny Bailey behind the boards. First round.
This is a topic we've discussed a little bit on this show in the last couple of weeks, Jordan, but it has now been reported that John Jones has agreed to an offer to fight Tom Aspinall for $12 million. Your thoughts?
Oh, the John Jones saga is more of a soap opera than the weekly installments of Monday Night Raw at this point. I mean, there's allegedly the agreement that's in place for John's quote unquote FU money at 12 million to go fight Tom. And Dana speaks about it in the post-fight press conference. All the while, though, during the show, John had been tweeting and talking about how, oh, well, now he would rather fight Francis and how, you know, there might be some other options for him in the mix. And Dana was like, well, just got to chalk it up to John has been John since John walked in the door. And those were kind of new developments. And it was kind of maybe the first time in all of this saga where we started to see the patience of Dana with this John situation start to crack. He kind of just sat there with Dana's now accustomed, kind of look at the press conferences when he doesn't want to answer questions that are being thrown at him. And he just kind of, yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, he tweeted that, huh? Okay. So it's just me. Maybe that's, you know, me being a little bit too analytical and reading the body language from Dana, but I also have, you know, 20 years of analysis of watching this dude at post-fight press conferences. Starting to be a little bit of frustration.
Logan Storley discussed the potential lack of young American wrestlers turning to MMA after college wrestling as being a product of NIL deals. Does he bring up a good point?
I do think that it's a good point, especially with the way that some of these top wrestlers right now in college have gotten paid. You know, in the past, there wasn't really a largely profitable route for them to continue as a grappler or a competitor. There's been more opportunities as a grappler for them to make money over the last few years with stuff like CJI and whatnot arising. But largely for grapplers, there wasn't really much, you know, and that's on the jiu-jitsu side and wrestling, unless you were burning up the circuit like your Jordan Burroughs of the world or securing some of those top tier sponsorships. There wasn't really a tremendously profitable venture or route for you. Now, though, we're seeing with some of these guys, some of these top tier recruits with their NIL deals, they might come away from their collegiate career with having, you know, north of $1 million plus in their bank account. And the top guys, even more so. We saw the massive deal that Spencer Lee signed with Barstool a few years back. That was a couple $1 million by itself. So some of those guys, yeah, they now, why would, unless you absolutely have that fire burning in your belly to go compete and then also to go get punched in the face in the process and to learn an entirely different skill set, to go humble yourself, to go basically be a beginner all over again for crap money when you have a couple of M's in the bank. Is that something that you want to do? That's going to be something that it's a tremendous point by Logan Storley, who has that collegiate wrestling experience, who is a top tier MMA fighter, who I think that he brought forth a very, very interesting point that I hadn't thought of in the past.
Dana White has partnered with First Form and has brought on Taylor Lewan and Will Compton of Bussin' with the Boys as ambassadors for his new venture, Form Energy. Is this a smart partnership?
It was a great sponsorship until Taylor's first pitch the other day at the Cardinals game. No, just all things aside. I mean, that's something that Taylor will never be able to live down. I mean, that's in the realm of 50 Cent, Stephen A. Smith, those terrible first pitches that are always thrown on folly reels. The difference in that, though, Danny, those guys aren't athletes.
Great point.
Taylor Lewan spoke about this on his podcast yesterday and recap, and he said, they don't have expectations as an athlete. I was the first round draft pick who made a couple $100 million in my career playing sports. And I went out there and I laid the egg of eggs. He said it was like Groundhog Day all weekend in that they went out there, obviously everybody, all in the boys, as they should have, roasted him alive. But then they go to First Forum, which is out there in Missouri for the headquarters meeting for all this stuff with Dana and whatnot. And they said basically every new group of people that they went to, there was somebody that was hitting Taylor with the, how about that pitch, huh? And then they were at the UFC this last weekend. And of course, it being in Jersey and you having the hecklers from the East Coast, he said that he got hit with first pitch heckles the entire time while they were out there. So, hey, overall though, that's the type of guys though who have great energy, who will promote the brand with Form Energy. But on the flip side, First Form has a lot of legs within the fight game. They work with a ton of guys who are on the UFC roster right now. Smart partnership for Dana White to get involved with one of these brands that is actively in the mix with a lot of people on his roster, and also smart to involve some ambassadors like Taylor and Will with Bustin' with the Boys, who signed a massively lucrative deal with FanDuel, who separated from Barstool this last year. Guys who have the reach the way that they do, who are all over the place across multiple ventures. Smart move. I think that it's a good way to kick off that Form Energy brand there. But just like that, though, folks, we are all out of time. We want to thank you all so much for tuning in with us and following for Original Combat Sports programming each and every week. Got to thank my man Danny behind the boards holding it down for me, as well as the rest of the Mile High Sports crew. If you have the opportunity, come and check us out this weekend at the Stampede for Colorado Combat Club 24. If you aren't able to check it out in person, we do have a pay-per-view going for the event. You can check that out via the link on the CO Combat Club Instagram page. Check that out. Again, we're going to be putting on that show. We're cracking the doors at 6. First fight's kicking off at 7. We will see you there on Friday. Aside from that, I'm Jordan Kurtz. You can see me here next week, same time, same place. Give me that follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. This is the MMA Plug presented to you by Mile High Sports.